Arthur P. is from Roseville, California, and will be speaking for 45 minutes, followed by a 15-minute Q&A. The title of his message is Aim Higher, and his home group is the Rule 62 group. Welcome, Arthur.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Arthur. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Very grateful and privileged to be able to be here with everybody. I definitely want to welcome everybody, regardless of duration or length of time. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a place where we learn how to live and don't have to take a drink one day at a time. That's what I've found here, and I'm eternally grateful for that. I hope everyone's having a happy holiday season, and I wish you all a happy New Year. So I'd like to get started by saying that 3 years ago on this day at this time, I was about to get released from jail again for probably the 50th or 60th time in my life. I'd sat there over the holiday season and convinced myself yet again that I was going to get out and I wasn't going to drink. And wouldn't you know it, within about 3 hours, there I was, drunk again, and couldn't understand how or why it took place. Fortunately for me, I needed that experience. The next couple of weeks would become what has been the end for me. All I know is for one reason or another, from a very early age, I just kind of felt separate and felt a little bit different. Almost like I was, it's like I heard people tell me like they loved me or they cared about me. And I had friendships and I had family and I had all these things. I was just like somehow, some way, a little bit separate from that feeling that I saw other people experience, that feeling of unity and togetherness. And there's just like a little piece of me that always just felt like a little, like alone, like it was just me. I really didn't, I didn't like that feeling. And I don't know exactly how it took place. But sometime before the age of 14, I found out that if I poured enough alcohol in my body, that feeling went away. And I absolutely love that feeling because it was like being able to breathe for the first time. And so I just chased that feeling, and the book says that alcoholics drink typically because we like the effect produced by alcohol. And that was my experience. Sometimes the effect that I liked, it made me feel good. Sometimes it just cut off my emotions and I didn't feel anything. But regardless, it was the effect that I was after over and over and over. And from 14 to 31 is pretty much Groundhog's Day. I'm drinking every day unless I'm incarcerated or I'm hospitalized. And I can't get 24 hours together in almost 17 years unless I'm incarcerated. And life's just getting smaller and smaller, and the consequences are happening more often. And the fun and that feeling that I was chasing came fewer and more far between each drink. And the type of alcoholic that when I take a drink, it's like rolling the dice. I could be drunk for a day or two. I could be drunk for the next 18 months. I really have no idea how long I'm going to be intoxicated for. And I really have no idea how I'm going to behave, what type of activities I'm going to participate in, the type of person that I'm going to be. I have no idea of any of these things. And the most insane thing in the entire world is I'll wake up completely sober and out of my mind and understand that I just went through a series of consequences and adventures that I have no clue how they took place. And I'll make the most insane decision in the world. And that decision is to take another drink. And I'll go ahead and I'll just repeat that from the age of 14 to 31. And so, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, it was broken down pretty simply for me. I didn't want to come here. I had met somebody in a meeting a couple years prior to coming here, a meeting that I was forced to go to by the courts, or they're going to send me to prison. And I got a couple of phone numbers and never really used them. And sometime between then and this is like about the last 2 years that I'm out there drinking, I ran into this guy that I got his number like three separate times. Once once was the first time that I drank at work, yet again at a new job. The next time was when I started using other forms of alcohol the same day. And then the other time is when I'm suicidal and I no longer have a desire to live. And God works in mysterious ways. So long story short, I'm there at the very end. January 14th, 2021 is my sobriety date. And I picked up that phone and I called this guy that had no prior relationship to me, no connection to me whatsoever, other than the fact that we both suffer from the same affliction, the disease of alcoholism. And he took that phone call and I just explained to him what was going on with me and how, I wasn't convinced that I didn't want to drink anymore. But it was very clear to me, and I explained this to him, that pretty much every decision that I had made for about a decade had either harmed myself or somebody else, and I just really wanted to figure out how I could stop hurting other people and pushing other people away. And he made it crystal clear that he could help me do that, but in order to do that, I was going to have to stop drinking. And I just said okay. I didn't say yes. I wasn't excited about it. I just said, okay, tell me what it is I need to do. And he said, well, we're going to work 12 steps Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to get you in service right away. And he made it a point to tell me on day 0, he said, Arthur, he said, something that I need you to understand is I'm never going to be able to help you stay sober. I can't do it. I don't have that kind of power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you find what I've found, which is a relationship with a higher power, right? And he told me that higher power he calls God, and he said that was his objective, was to help connect me to a power greater than myself that I could rely and depend upon, and the reliance and dependence upon that higher power. The byproduct of that and a lot of small actions would be that I wouldn't drink anymore. And so, day 0, he had that conversation with me. We went to a meeting later on that night, and he said, you need to be of service. You need to help clean up after the meeting. And I didn't understand any of this. And again, I wasn't excited. It wasn't like a hooray. Yes, it was okay. Sure. Like, all I had known at this point in time in my life was that this was a man who was a complete stranger to me, but he had an experience with staying stopped from alcohol longer than I had ever had. And that was good enough for me. So we worked the steps, we worked them diligently, and I got really active in service, and I've just never stopped. Service is it says in the big book that, helping others is the foundation stone of our recovery. And I found that to be true. I have a home group that I attend regularly. I'm in service to that group. I have several H&I commitments, and I take meetings into rehabs and homeless shelters. I'm in the process of getting clearance to take meetings into jails and juvenile hall in the county that I live in. This isn't the Arthur that I know, right? And the big book talks about God will demonstrate through me what he can do. And that's my experience, because like the Arthur that I know doesn't show up for himself, let alone other people. And the Arthur that I know and remember doesn't put other people's welfare before his own. But somehow, some way, I keep showing up to these places. And the coolest thing about it is like the byproduct of like showing up to these places and being of service is like I get invited places now, like cool places. Like I get invited to come speak on New Year's Eve, right? Instead of getting invited to go stay in jail for another couple of weeks, right? Like I get invited over to family's house instead of getting invited back to the hospital. I get invited to go to friends' houses, and I get all these invitations that it's like I've got this debt that I've incurred that I owe to AA, that I owe to the universe, that I'll never be able to pay, but the coolest part about it is like every now and again, I get an invitation to show up for other people, and I make it a point to do so because that's what I was told to do. And more importantly, that's what my sponsor demonstrated to me. My sponsor did very little talking about what it is that I needed to do. He just showed me. He just showed up and showed me. And still to this day, he still shows up and shows me. And I'm just eternally grateful, not just to my sponsor, but to the rooms Alcoholics Anonymous and the people in Alcoholics Anonymous who just keep showing up. Like, there's one thing I can count on. Like, you guys show up. And that's cool, because like when I'm having a hard day or like I'm full of self and I don't want to show up, like it's very easy for me to think about all the people in my life that show up consistently without excuses. And it's a small reminder that, like if all them can do it, right, like I could probably do it too. It's not, maybe it's not to my preference. Maybe it's not to my liking. Maybe I get lucky and it's extremely inconvenient. My experience has shown me that when I show up, my life gets better. And even if it's not in that moment, in hindsight, I get to look back and I get to realize that just for another moment in time, I was able to think of others more than myself. And that's pretty cool because I don't know about you guys. I think about myself all the time. It starts pretty much right when I wake up. I think about, what kind of coffee am I going to have? Am I going to use creamer? Am I going to have an iced coffee or regular coffee? What time should I get to work today? And, what outfit am I going to wear? And what route am I going to take? And then it's like me, right? All day long. So, I make it a point to wake up and pray and meditate in the morning and just ask God for direction and guidance. I think that, one of the biggest questions I get asked by my guys is like, what is like God's will for me? And like the way I kind of break it down to, I tell them, I say, I'm not sure. I said, but for me, like, I'm pretty sure I know what God's will is not for me. And I can do deductive reasoning, right? Like the God of my understanding probably doesn't want me to be like a thief, probably doesn't want me to be dishonest, right? The God of my understanding probably doesn't want me to be mean or vengeful or like any of these things, right? So I try to break it down like in simple ways like that and to help my guys grow in understanding. So when I got here, I was 120 pounds. I was homeless. I was derelict. I was unemployable. I didn't have a job. Everything I owned fit in 2 duffel bags. And I honestly wanted to stop drinking for about the last 10 years I drank, and I couldn't manage to accomplish that. I was uncomfortable in my own skin. I was suicidal, and just a mess. And now here I am, just almost 3 years later. My experience has been that I haven't thought about a drink since the last time I took a drink. It talks about that in the big book. That the obsession for me to drink was removed on day 0, and that's a gift that was given to me by God. That through the grace of God, that at the time I didn't even understand. I couldn't even recognize. I wasn't aware or awake to the fact that this God was working in my life, but it was, and I can see that vividly now, and have been able to for some time. And on this side of life, things are better. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I think about others. Typically, a good portion of my day centers around what I can do for other people and how I can show up for other people. And it takes various different forms. The big book says that much more important demonstration of these principles in our lives and affairs. Pardon me, I'm paraphrasing. And I find that to be true, right? Like if I just show up to a meeting like once a day or a couple of times a week, and like I can talk pretty good, right? But what's my character and conduct look like when I'm not in those meetings? What kind of employee am I? What kind of boss am I? How do I treat my significant other? Do I check on my family? What kind of friend am I? These things matter. The way that I show up for life matters. You guys have just showed me how to show up and be a better person than I was yesterday. So aim higher. When I got here, one of my good friends now, he asked me, he said, Arthur, he goes, why do you keep coming to these meetings? And I said, well, I said, I don't ever want to drink again. He goes, if that's the case, you'll probably drink again. And I had no idea what he meant, and he said, Arthur, he goes, let me put it to you like this. If your aim is to not drink and you fall short, what do you think is going to happen? So I'll probably end up drunk. He goes, probably. He goes, but he goes, if you aim for conscious contact with God and you fall short, what do you think will happen? I said, I probably wouldn't drink. He goes, well, that's been my experience. And he did just classic AA. He didn't tell me how to do it. He just showed up and showed me. And this is one of my most trusted confidants now. I talk to this man about everything, and he's not my sponsor, but God puts people in your life to send you messages, and I needed to hear that message. And right after that, he told me one of my favorite things as well, which is, Arthur, he said he was told, and he told it to me. He said, if you can be open-minded to the fact that you might not be open-minded, you might be able to find what I've found here. And man, I think about that all the time, because I'll be at a place and a time in life when I feel good and maybe sometimes I think not necessarily that I've arrived, but that I'm at kind of the precipice. And I think about it, and I think about Kevin and how he always says aim higher. If I feel good now and I help out, somebody today, I can take aim higher into so many different ways in my life, right? Could I help out more people today? Can I be open-minded to that? Have I done what I can do to pay my debt today to AA and to the God of my understanding? And if I have, could I pay more? Right? If I'm honest today, could I be more honest? Can I be more disciplined? So I take aim higher and I really try to put it in and work it into every facet of my life. And what I find is that every day is a new day and a new experience. And I'm grateful for that experience. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to flip through some really important things, because I have an opinion about absolutely everything. And the last thing in the world I want to do is offer too many opinions and not enough big books. So I'm going to jump into the big book. And on page 44, if when you honestly want to, you find you can't quit entirely, or when drinking, you have little control or not, you take, you're probably alcoholic. That's me. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Okay. Sounds like there's a solution for me. And then it goes down to say to be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. Okay. And then further on down, it says, after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. So there's like three places on one page, and it didn't tell me to stop drinking, but it said that I should, that there's something to do with this spiritual stuff, right? And so for me, it's like, here's the not drinking, here's the spiritual way of life, right? I need to aim higher. I need to try to see what this is all about, right? And then it goes on, and on the next page, it says that lack of power was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how am I to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main objective is enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. It's funny. I don't know about you guys, but I noticed there it didn't say anything about not drinking again. Right? It hasn't talked about. So, when I first started reading all this stuff, I was confused because I thought I was coming to Alcoholics Anonymous just to not drink anymore, and then when I start peeling the layers of the onion and the literature back, the more and more I look at it, it's not talking about not drinking. It's talking about how to live. And it says that in our big book, right? That this is a design for living. And how do I figure all that stuff out? So I'm going to just skip to another couple of quick pages and then I'll wrap it up here. I love this. It was also told to me too that the big book is called our basic text, and a text is a book that we study, right? Same reason why, like when I was in school as a kid, my teacher didn't just hand me a book and say, you've got it figured out, you passed this year, right? I had to open that book time and time again to find out information, and the more that I studied that information, the more it came to me, and the more I was able to kind of readily have that information available to use. And I find that like the big book, and like the principles, the more that I practice them, like the more that they're readily available to be used. Anyhow, I digress. So on page 77 at the top, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and to the people about us, right? And then talks about God consciousness all over the book. Page 85, page 51, page 567. It just keeps talking about this God consciousness. And here's something too, right? Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. Well, that's okay. The big book talks about what starts off as an occasional thought of inspiration, eventually becomes a working part of the mind. And I'm not 100% positive, but I think that's what the God consciousness is. I think that's that intuitive decision that I make when at first it takes me a long time to find out the right action to take. But then after practicing that time and time again, after being honest, having integrity, being disciplined, being altruistic, being service-minded, having pure intentions. I think after all this work of intentionally being mindful of these things, what has begun to happen in my life is it becomes second nature. And not at all times. But it happens the more and more that I practice it. And I find that AA is just full of these amazing teachers. And if I can just be open-minded, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for is my open-mindedness. I know the literature pretty well, and I know how to work the steps. I've gone through them about 4 times now, and I know all these things, but, I have to be careful with the things that I know, because the big book talks about self-knowledge is not enough, right? So I have to be very careful about the things that I quote unquote know. So even things that I know, I remind myself, can I be open-minded to the fact that I don't know everything about that, right? And I try to place my thoughts on the plane of inspiration and of God consciousness. And what that looks like in my life today is I'm not a very selfish person anymore. When I wake up in the morning and I seek God and I ask for direction and guidance, I genuinely mean it. I don't just do it because the book told me I need to do it. Very, very little aspects of my life are checking boxes anymore. And I learned that here, right? Because here's the deal with aiming higher. And here's the deal with this whole concept of God consciousness and trusting God. This is a program of action. I thought about getting sober for 10 years. I thought about it every day, and it never happened. I don't know why, but I tell you what, I thought about it around the clock. How can I get sober? How can I not drink? And it never came, right? But when I started showing up and doing things that you guys suggested, and praying to this God that I didn't understand and didn't have a relationship with, and making the coffee and what have you, the byproduct of those actions was the fact that the days started to compile themselves. I had to put no effort whatsoever into not taking that next drink. And by trying to practice these principles in all my affairs, it shows up, man. Like the cool thing about AA, in my experience, is that like the more that I just show up and I try to do what you guys show me how to do, AA starts popping up in all these areas of my life. And then like, at work, like I'm trusted with these massive projects that, I'm not even sure I should be in charge of, but people at my company think I should be. And I have friends that like trust me around their small children. And I have men in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous who trust me literally with their life to take them through the 12 steps and help show them what I've been shown. And I can't take credit for any of it. I really can't, I can't repeat it enough. God will demonstrate through me what he can do. And I think like I try to remind myself of that often, because my ego is still alive and well. And, with all the different, service commitments I have and the men that I sponsor and the meetings that I show up to, like my ego will try to trick me and like tell me that I'm doing more than enough. But I got to think back, man. I got to remember the time that I couldn't not take a drink when that was the only thing in the world that I wanted, when all I thought about was myself and didn't care how it affected other people. I have to remind myself of these things when my ego gets to working, because like, like maybe I'm not in enough service. Maybe I'm not helping enough men. Maybe I don't have enough commitments. And you know what? Maybe I do, but I need to be open-minded to like both sides of it, right? And I think that like when I have that morning meditation, that morning prayer, like that's so important to me, is like to just go to God, because that really that helps dictate the rest of my day, I think one of the most important things that I've learned here is just to really, take the steps seriously and take the instructions seriously. In the third step, it says that he's going to be my director. And if I stick close to him and perform his work well, he'll provide what I need. And it doesn't say what I want. It says what I need. What I need is typically more than I ever imagined, And I like to look at that, and I like to remind myself, like, what does that mean? What do I need? Well, whatever the God of my understanding deems necessary, And so by reminding myself of that, I get to forget about the minutia of life, like my job. The job that I have, the salary that I get paid, the title that I have, that's not my business. That's God's business. The car that I drive, that's not my business. That's God's business. The home that I live in, that's not my business. That's God's business. The people that I meet and the places I go and the things that I do, that's all God's business, right? Like I made that decision in the third step to stop managing my own life and to allow this power greater than myself to manage my life for me. Well, I can say that, but can I show up and actually do the action? So when something happens, do I find myself in will and I'm trying to force my will on a subject or a problem or a topic or a relationship? And I find more and more I do that very little. And one of the biggest ways that shows up in my life is I have a beautiful little girl named Sophia, and she'll be 9 years old in February, and I haven't been able to see or speak to her in 3 years. And, I've been in and out of court 9 different times. And it's just been a battle. And, my mom asks me all the time, why don't you just show up to her house? There's no restraining order. There's no this, there's no that. And that's a good question, but, I'm not confident that, that's what's God's will for me at this point in time, and it's hard because I love this little girl and I want to see her. But how do I remove myself from acting out on what I could convince myself is God's will? Well, that's perfect. program Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's when I get to grab that phone. I call my sponsor, I ask some guys at the meeting, hey, what would you do in this situation? And when I do find myself thinking about any of my troubles in my life, my experience is that I'm thinking about me more than I'm thinking about you, and I'm in trouble. And for me, it's pretty simple. I don't think there's been a day that's gone by, and coming up on 3 years, I could actually tell you, I know for a fact there's not a day that's gone by in almost 3 years that I haven't texted or spoke to at least 3 alcoholics over the phone, at least every day. And that includes when I've gone on vacation, when I've left the country. It doesn't matter, right? There's not a day of my life that's gone by, because like it was told to me from the very beginning that like if I didn't actively try to give this gift away every day, I stand a chance of losing it. And I don't know about you guys, but the type of alcoholic that I am, like I can't risk losing this. And then so I can take a concept like that and think, well, like, wow, like, lose it, my sobriety. Well, the big book even says, right, we feel a man is unthinking when he says sobriety is not enough. I need to aim higher. This whole thing is not about me not drinking. This whole thing is about improving my conscious contact with God. And what I find is I have the most conscious contact with God. I don't know about you, but for me, it's when I'm helping another alcoholic. It's when I walk into that homeless shelter and I'm bringing a meaning of hope into a place that could be dark and desperate. It's when I get to go to that rehab. And it's not when I'm sitting there. It's never when I'm sitting there. It's when I walk away from these places, when I walk out of the homeless shelter that I was once in. It's when I walk out of that rehab that I was once in, 7 different rehabs. And sometimes it's on the drive home. And what that looks like in my life most of the time is the fact that it dawns on me that I'm comfortable in my own skin. It just dawns on me that taking a drink just slipped my mind. It dawns on me that for the first time in my life, I really enjoy seeing the reflection in the mirror, and not in a vain way and not in an egotistical way. It's because I know that the reflection that's looking back on me is someone I never imagined would be there. A person of honesty and integrity. And I could never repay the debt that I owe to Alcoholics Anonymous and to the God of my own understanding. So I just try. And some days I don't do a great job. Our book says that it's about spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. And I try to toe that line of being into service, but also not hiding from life by being involved in service, right? Because I can do that too. I did that when I was really early. In my first 6 to 9 months, I had like 6 or 7 different secretary positions, and I had like, I had like 8 or 9 positions in my first 6 months, and it dawned on me like that I was spending a lot of time, like I was relying and depending on the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous to keep me sober. I was relying and depending upon the fact that, I have this commitment tomorrow. I gotta get there, and I have these people that I'm in service to, and like, I can't live like that. Not anymore, So I try to toe that line of like being in service, but with the right intentions, right? Like, am I in service because like I think this is what God would have me do, or am I in service so like I can show up to a meeting and talk about the service that I'm involved in? Or am I in service so like I can give my ego a pat on the back? Like what's the underlying causes and conditions? And the most beautiful part about it is like as I continue to go through the step work, and I continue to take other men through the step work, right? More continues to be revealed to me, right? I get to find out more about myself and more about other people, and ultimately what I think is like, the meaning of life, which is always like the age-old question, what is the meaning of life? I don't know, but a part of me thinks that like part of the meaning of life is like being able to find internal happiness and more importantly, share that with somebody else, And that's just so cool, because like all these concepts and all these ideas, like I had no idea what any of this stuff meant. And to be honest with you, sometimes I still don't. That's why I take I take a portion of my day every day and I try to sit in silence. Because I'll convince myself sometimes that I know what God's will is, and I'm wrong, and it's my will, you know. And so it's very important to me to seek guidance. And a lot of times what that looks like is it's picking up the phone and typically calling people that have more time with me, and more time than me. And you know what? Sometimes I get these great pearls of wisdom from people with less time than me. I never know who's going to show up and be a teacher. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from this book. It's called "There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem" by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And in that book, in the very beginning, there's a quote that says, all the meetings in our lives are orchestrated by the divine, and to the strangers we're drawn, they have something to teach us. And I love that, because I never know who I'm going to learn something from. And I find that the more open I can be to remain teachable and just to learn just how to live, right? Because like, I don't know about you guys, but like my experience these last 3 years, though it's short, like I haven't spent any time trying to figure out how to not drink. I still don't know how to like not like put energy into not drinking. I still don't know how to do that. Like, but what I've been taught is like how to show up. I've been taught to be honest, to keep my word. I've been shown how to think about other people's welfare before I think about my own. And like all these little actions just keep working, and I can't understand it and I can't quantify it. And I'm like the guy that like, I need to figure everything out. Like I need to understand how it works. And I still can't quite explain like how it works, but all I know is it does work. And, I want to wrap it up here in just a second. You know, I think one of the most important aspects of my recovery today, I think the most important aspect of my recovery today is my relationship with God. You know, if I look back at my life, it's very, very crystal clear for me to see God was working in my life long before I could see it. And a lot of times that's how I see God, is in hindsight. I see God working in my life when I'm not paying attention, and when I'm not necessarily awake to it. And the steps were just such a beautiful way for me to help me get there. You know, that the steps to me are exactly as they're described in the book. It's a way to kind of clear away the things that block me from the God of my understanding. And so kind of like the journey that I'm on now, you know, I mentioned earlier, I keep, you know, the big book says that an inventory that doesn't, a business that doesn't regularly take inventory usually goes broke. And so I kind of take that as instructions that I should probably work the steps again. And then when I finish that round, I should probably work the steps again. And because I don't want to go broke, because like what broke looks like for me is like sitting in a jail cell on New Year's Day. What broke looks like for me is nobody in the world wants to be around me. What broke looks like for me is sitting in a jail cell and not even wanting to pick up the phone, because the fact of the matter is that there's nobody to call. And then the realization that it's all my fault. That's what broke looks like for me. And so now the best part about it is like, I get to take that concept of aiming higher, and I get to rework the steps and just try to peel the layers of the onion back. And, you know, and sometimes I find after a round of steps, I become like a little more honest, or maybe I have like a little more integrity, and sometimes like there's not these big profound changes, but just like I used to like the effect produced by alcohol, I like the effect produced by the step work and helping God's kids. I really do. That's the effect of sitting across the table from somebody else, or sitting in that rehab and seeing somebody just get a glimmer of hope, or working with a newcomer and their lights finally come on, and being able to be a part of that is it's just such a beautiful thing, because somebody did that for me. I'll close with this. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, welcome. I hope you have found what I have found. I did not show up to Alcoholics Anonymous and get sober by osmosis. I also didn't get the life that I don't feel like I deserve by osmosis. Meetings were not and still will not be enough for me. My experience has been that I have had to get busy and show up for other people and show up for service commitments and work the steps. And, my sponsor always told me, Arthur, there's no right way or wrong way to work the steps. We're just going to work them out of the big book. And I want you to be honest and thorough. And so like by doing that and doing all these other things, like the byproduct is like the days just kind of add up for themselves. I don't have to put any work into the days adding up, and so if you're new here, I hope you find that. And for those of you that came before me, it's so important that I mention this every time that I share. I also owe a debt to you. I like to call you guys the bearers of the torch, because you have that, you kept the light on for a guy like me when I was lost in the dark, completely lost, completely hopeless, and nowhere to run and nowhere to turn. And there are those of you that have just continued to show up day after day, year after year, decade after decade, and keep that light on. And had it not been for you, I probably wouldn't be here right now. You'd have another speaker. And so I'm just eternally grateful for the work that you have done. I'm eternally grateful for you all showing me how to live. And I'm eternally grateful that you all remind me consistently that it is God that has put you in my life. It is God that has given you the ability to do that. And it is God that has given me the ability to do this. Thank you so much for letting me speak. God bless everybody and Happy New Year.
Hello, Val. Good evening, everybody. I am Ratha. I will be Q&A host today. And I just want to thank Arthur, especially for the part where you thanked all the bearers. If Bill hasn't written the book, and there has not been people who carried this torch to today, so many people of these squares and so many other squares in the world and other rooms in the world would not be here. They would be dead. I would be dead, that's for sure. Thank you, Arthur, for wonderful share. And Val, please let me invite you to ask Arthur a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought somebody said we didn't have to ask a question. I just wanted to say thank you, Arthur, for your lead. It was it was amazing. And what I got out of you was God is everything or he's nothing. That's what I got, and that's what I have to stay with every day. I wake up, thank him, and just keep it moving and talk to him, ask him for help. And these past 2 years are miracle years because I've been struggling for over 20-something years. So I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you all. I have to leave. I'm reading with somebody at 3:30. So have a great day. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Val. Happy New Year. Deborah, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Rasa. My name is Deborah. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And Arthur, thank you. That was awesome. My ears kind of perked up a little bit when you said, you never know who you're going to learn from. And that has happened to me since going through the steps, having had a spiritual awakening and being teachable. My question is, who or what was the last person or thing that you learned something from? Thank you.
Arthur alcoholic. Yeah, great question. The last person that I learned something from was my my one of my sponsees, his name is Max, and what I learned from him is that, and it's taken me a long time to realize this, and I've known it, but it just dawned on me that like we all have our own path, and some of the things that work for me might not necessarily work for him. And it's important for me to meet him where he is at, not try to have him meet me where I am at. And so what I've learned ultimately from that, the lesson in that is I need to employ a little bit more patience. Just because I was able to grab something right away doesn't mean everybody will. And so the ultimate lesson was be patient and ask God for direction. And most importantly, just try to meet people where they're at. Don't assume that everybody is where I am at.
Thank you, Arthur, and thank you, Deborah. Please do come in with questions. Please do show your service and your appreciation to this wonderful share we heard today. However, meanwhile, I had a question in a chat. And let me just make sure that I read it correctly. So, Arthur, the question is, what keeps you motivated to continually aim higher, and who or what has been your biggest inspiration in this journey?
What makes me motivated to continue to aim higher? I have very vivid memories of the way that I lived my life for a very long time. And now I've been blessed with very vivid memories of the smiles on my mom's face, of my siblings' face, of the love in people's heart when they see me come around. And I take those pictures and I hold them very close in my memory and in my heart, because the two are not very far apart. And the old me will always be there, right? I will always love the effect produced by alcohol. It's just a matter of whether or not I get to stay stopped for the rest of my journey. And so when I kind of think that I've hit like a plateau, and it has happened several times, it typically means that I need to do a little bit more work. And that work takes different forms. One of my biggest inspirations, I have to say, my sponsor. My sponsor is a soldier in AA, and every time like I think I'm doing a lot, I can look at him. He typically sponsors 30 to 40 guys, 5 or 6 commitments. He's married. He has a full-time job. He'll drive hundreds of miles to speak at a meeting. So, yeah, I would say my sponsor.
Wow, that is some commitment. Thank you, Arthur. Sky, would you come in, please?
Hi, Rasa. Thank you. Arthur, thank you so much for that. I loved straight away you came in and you said in AA, we learn how to live. And isn't that the truth? My goodness, I thought I was learning how not to drink, and I'm not. I'm learning how to live with this mad woman, but with a sense of serenity, which is an absolute miracle. My question to you is, how you said, now it's not your aim to not drink, but it is your aim. It was suggested to you, but your aim is for conscious contact with God, which I loved that. So what do you do daily in your conscious contact with God?
Yeah, great question. For starters, it's taking the directions out of the big book, right? Upon awakening. And I take that very seriously. So what that looks like for me is like the moment that I realize that I'm conscious, the moment that I wake up. So it's I don't grab my cell phone and check the time or the emails or the stock market. I like literally upon awakening, the moment that I acknowledge the fact that I'm conscious, I go straight to God. And I pray and I ask for direction and guidance, and I pray for the ability to just let me serve and let me be of service, whatever that looks like. And the other things that I do throughout the day is typically shortly after I wake up, I reach out to another alcoholic almost immediately. So it's like wake up, pray, ask for direction, ask for guidance, and then more importantly, like take action on that, right? Like if I've learned anything here, it's take action. So I reach out to alcoholics and make sure people are okay, because I think that's what God's will is for me. And then I just turn to God throughout the day.
Thank you, Arthur. Cindy, please do come in with your question.
Hello, everyone. Cindy Alcoholic. Thank you for calling on me, Raza, and welcome to any newcomers here. And I want to thank Tamara especially for turning me out of this meeting. It's been a gift in my life. Arthur, thank you. Thank goodness for scotch and Post-it notes, right? I have a whole tail on my iPad that I'm going to put in my little book of what I got from you today. But my question to you is this. So you've mentioned how you get, I think, these little pings to rework the steps again. And sounds like you've been doing them a few times. My wonder is, when you go back to rework them, is there a thought in your mind, okay, I really want to go back to step 1 or step 8 or whatever it is, so that you delve even more deeply into that one? Or do you just approach them okay, I just want to rework them solidly, all of them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what worked for me in the beginning is what still works for me now, and that's taking my sponsor's suggestions. So typically what'll happen is we'll finish a round of steps, and sometimes, usually it's a month or 2 months will go by, and I'll just say, hey, Dan, I think I'm ready for another round. And then I kind of just what I try to do is take an open mind to the steps. Because for me, there's a whole litany of things that I want to work on, right? My entitlement or my ego or whatever it might be. But my experience has been that I didn't get what I wanted when that's what I was aiming for. And so I just try to take an open mind to that process. And so what that looks like is we've done the steps several different ways now, right? Where we're actually in the process of doing the 12 steps out of the 12 and 12. We've done the 12 steps by writing essays on all the principles and discussing that. So it keeps taking different forms. And through that process of having the open mind, typically something new is revealed to me, because when we work them current. So if the last time I worked them was 6 months ago and we're working them now, it would be from when we finished to now, and then so on and so forth. Hope that answers.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. I have another question that came in the chat. How do you balance the pursuit of higher goals with everyday demands of life and maintaining sobriety? So, to combine mundane with divine, I suppose.
How do I balance the two? To be completely honest, I don't try to, right? I that's God's business. All I'm responsible for is my conduct when I show up to places and taking the action of showing up places, right? So I do have higher goals. What my experience has been, I haven't gotten any smarter. I haven't gone back to college and gotten any more degrees. Not that these are bad things. I think those are great things, but I personally haven't gotten any smarter or worked any harder. And yet my professional career life has taken off to places I never imagined it would be. And it's by showing up for Alcoholics Anonymous and continuing to just show up and practice these principles, all the other stuff works itself out. I don't really have to focus on it. I don't have to focus on I prayed very hard in the beginning for God to give me less responsibility personally and professionally so I could focus on recovery. And I still take that into my prayer today. What has happened is I've been given more responsibilities, more bigger job titles, bigger raises, more, all these things personally, professionally, and even in my intimate life. But the key for me is that I've always kept my recovery number one. I was told to put that number one, put God number one, recovery right next to it. Everything else will work itself out. So far, it's true. I've changed jobs a couple times. I've moved. All these things have happened, but somehow or another, I just keep showing up for AA and making time for that. And then job opportunities come and the pay raises come. I just don't have to focus on them. And for me, it's a lot more peaceful that way.
Thank you, Arthur. Are there any more hands? Adam would like to ask Arthur myself. How do you maintain your hope and optimism? You're amazing. That's what I want to say. You are just amazing. How do you maintain that?
Thank you. Yeah, all credit goes to God. I think really it has to do with and the book talks about like stand with us on the firing lines, and I stand on that firing line on a consistent basis. There's very rarely a period of time when more than a day or two will go by and I'm not in contact with a newcomer, and I just remember that feeling of despair and hopelessness so well, and like. I just, man, I don't ever want, it's not even about me wanting to go back there. Like, I don't want other people to have to experience that. And so by being able to show up for other people and trying to just give this thing away, it just kind of like, it's kind of like the fire's lit. I heard a speaker when I was super, super new. He had 30 something years or whatever it was. It was a long, long time. And he said, he goes, the pink cloud doesn't exist. He goes, here I am 30 some odd years later, and I live in a spiritual experience. He goes, that's like that's where it really happens. And that's kind of been my experience, is like, I'm not trying to like float on some cloud or be like, high on the horse. I just like, I keep trying to help God's children, and God just keeps helping me. I can't explain it. All I know is like, I've always been extremely active in service and very, very taken my prayer and my meditation very seriously. And like the byproduct of those couple of things is that like, I have this fire, that this passion for recovery and for life. And it's important. It's very important for me to try to give it away,
Thank you, Arthur. Oh, sorry. Sorry very much. Sorry about that. Just uninterrupted and unexpected interruption from my dogs. Have we got any more hands? Oh, I got a question. One more question in the chat. In taking a daily inventory, what have you become increasingly aware of?
Lately, it's been my entitlement. My entitlement shows up and it's like sneaky, but like one of the biggest ways is like the community that I live in is in the suburbs, and there's, it's a newer community, and there's a couple of stop signs before I have to get home. And like, there's not that many people that live out here yet. And so I just kind of take it upon myself to just roll past the stop signs every day. Like I look, I'm not like driving 90, like blowing these stop signs. I look and it dawned on me recently that like, that's my entitlement, right? That's my ego telling me that like, I don't need to stop and abide by the law, right? Because like nobody's out here, and I'll justify and I'll make these excuses up. And I see it in other ways too, like there's certain times when I'm at the grocery store and like there's a long line and I get a little frustrated. That's my entitlement speaking to me. It's telling me like, don't you guys know who I am? Like I have places to be, and like I'm Arthur, like I shouldn't have to wait in a line. And so like recently, because I like to try to stay current, the biggest thing that pops up is my entitlement. And I'm now like very hyper aware of it. And like when I see it, like I actually have told my coworkers about it. I've told, my significant other about it. Like pretty much anybody who I've come in contact with in the last few weeks, like they know that like entitlement is the watchword for me right now. Because you guys also showed me to like, it's good to have other people help hold me accountable. So the daily inventory is extremely important. Currently, what it's bringing up the most is entitlement.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you very much for all your answers. And this concludes Q&As for today.